Okay, so today's Cardinal lesson, we're talking about Medicare Part D. And just to share a little bit of why I'm sitting down today, I had a little accident over the weekend and blew out my knee. And don't want to give a lot of details on that, but I'm sitting, I got a walker that I got in here with. And so the show must go on. We're talking about Part D of Medicare, the drug plan. And the first thing I want to say on this is there was no drug coverage in Medicare or as part of Medicare 2005 and before. So for a lot of the years that I was offering Medicare supplement insurance, we didn't have anything solution for the drugs. I mean, in the 80s, 70s, we didn't really need it because drugs were not that expensive back then. And in the 90s and early 2000s, we really needed it. And that's why we got Medicare Part D in 2005. Okay. And then a lot of people ask us, why is this so confusing? And I'm just going to tell you that this was to create a big government program like this to cover drugs on Medicare. First of all, it has a big cost, and you can't use last year's budget when you're creating it from scratch. So this was a big political football to even get it passed. And so we ended up with these 4 phases of coverage. And they were confusing right from the start. And so what Tom is going to do is he's going to give you some examples of how we deal with this. And just note to self, we use software in a computer to look at all the options for any one particular client for you, and looking at the drugs you're taking and the pharmacy you want to use, and then all the plans that are available in your zip code. And it would be impossible to do this by hand. Okay. Yeah, a lot of consumers just end up getting sold whatever drug plan whoever they're talking to offers. Like if you go and ask for this at the pharmacy and you get the little gentleman or lady sitting over at the table over there, they probably only sell for one drug plan. Okay. And so, and you're probably fine with that, but maybe you're not once you start taking your drugs. And so we have a pretty thorough analysis system. And I'm just going to give you an overview is that the deductible on the standard Part D drug plan in 2024 is $545. Now, it gets further complicated is that's the most it can be. So any plan, if they want to make their deductible 300 or 200, they can. So it's going to be, but on a lot of them, it's $545. And then furthermore, generic drugs don't count toward the deductible, or they don't have to incur the deductible. So on most of them. So, if you're on all generic drugs, you're not going to have any deductible. And if you're on some expensive drugs that are brand name, you're going to have the deductible for them and then no deductible. And people are confused right off the bat. Okay. So anyhow, phase 1's the deductible. Phase 2 is the initial coverage. And it states that it's 75-25. Usually it's a stated copay, and it's going to be over the next $5,000 of drugs. You're going to have this phase 2. And then phase 3 is what used to be called the donut hole. And the donut hole was just, coverage just ended for a while. That was what the politicians came up with, is we're going to have a deductible, then we're going to share the cost, and when you get up to a limit, then you got nothing for so long. And the nothing was called the donut hole. And then after the donut hole gets all filled up with you paying, then it had this catastrophic coverage, which is phase 4. And so I've got you thoroughly confused, I know. And I'm just explaining to you there's 4 phases in the standardized plan, and then companies don't have to go by it. It has to be at least this good. It can be made better. And then they have this formulary business where every one of them has a different formulary. So depending on the drugs you're on, and they treat different drugs differently, you need a computer to figure out which one is best. So what I want to do is I want to turn it over to Tom, and I want Tom to go through the examples with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that we reiterate is what we have on the board here is not every single plan. Right? I mean, each plan is a little bit different. This is sort of standard, typically what the plan looks like. Like Hans was saying, really you need to get into the specifics of your medications, what pharmacy you use, really to find the plan that's going to work best for you. And so, what I want to do, sort of for most of the rest of the video today, is walk you through a hypothetical example of maybe two clients, one with maybe the less expensive drugs, one with more expensive drugs, and just show you sort of how that process works. Before we get into that, I'm going to bring up the show notes here just so we can get that out of the way. We have the board again, like we do typically. You can find this at the link below our video. It's also on our website. We have this was pulled from a website that has way more information you'd ever want to know about Part D. So if you really want to get into it, go for it. I've really highlighted a couple of the key points that we're going over on the board here. So again, if you really want to take a deep dive, go through, read all this. But what we're going to do mostly in the show notes is real time walk through this example. This is using the software we use for clients. This isn't a real client. This is a fictitious person. But I just want to show you sort of how this process works. And so what we do initially is we'll get a list of your medications. That's one of the first things we're going to ask you is sort of what medications are you taking. And so I've just put in some pretty generic ones that are prescribed to a lot of people. Most of these are all of these here are really inexpensive. So we put in here, we have amlodipine, a statin, metoprolol, and simvastatin, and again, just different various ones. You can specify the pharmacy, and so again, that's important. One of the points that we make on the board is that each plan has their preferred pharmacies and their standard pharmacies that are not the preferred pharmacies. The cost will be different either one, so that can make a difference which plan we're doing. So I've just selected Walgreens for this show. If you have a different pharmacy, we obviously can run that. So we'll save that information, and then what the software does is it ranks the plans by least expensive total cost, because we got to factor in the premium plus the drug cost. It ranks them from least expensive to most expensive. And so this was run in North Carolina. Again, another thing to be aware of is these plans can be slightly different from state to state. You don't have the same differences like you have on the supplements or advantage plans, but the prices can be somewhat different depending on where you live. But you'll notice that this WellCare plan in North Carolina has a $0 premium, this is the first year I've actually seen that be the case. So that's ranked as the highest. The estimated annual cost is $60. I don't want to really teach you the software, but you'll see the estimated annual drug cost is 60. So we'll click on this one and slowly walk you through sort of how this works. Again, this plan, like Hans was saying, is the typical $545 deductible. And it also that excludes tier 1 and tier 2 medications, which is pretty typical for most plans. Not every plan, but most do that. And so let's look at the details here. The first sort of details page really just walks through those different phases and sort of what those copays are, what the co-insurance are. And so this isn't looking at your specific medications, but giving you a general idea of sort of what this looks like. And so we have the deductible sort of phase, we call it a level in the software, but the drug deductible is $545. But again, it excludes tier 1 and tier 2 medications. And so you'll see for a tier 1 medication, if you're at the preferred pharmacy, that's a $0 copay. If you're at a standard pharmacy, so not one of their preferred ones, it's a $5 copay. Tier 2, $5 for preferred, $10 for standard. And then you see the deductible apply. So deductible, all that means is you're paying the full cost of that medication until you've met that $545 cost. After that phase has been satisfied, you've paid the 545, you go into the initial coverage level, which again, we have tier 1 and tier 2. This matches what was on the deductible one because the deductible didn't apply to tier 1 and tier 2 medications. And then tier 3, we have a 25% co-insurance, so you pay 25% of the cost. And then tier 4 is 50%, tier 5 is. So you can just sort of see which tier your medication is. Each plan has their own formulary, so it's different from plan to plan. But you can sort of see which plan, what tier your medication falls in, what phase are you in to sort of determine the cost. And again, it goes on from there. So we don't want to go too far into this, but the coverage gap level, it's 25% down the board. And then this is the first year. This is actually interesting. Is the catastrophic coverage up until previously you'd have 5% of the cost or something you'd have to pay. Starting in 2024, it's a $0 copay. So once you hit the catastrophic coverage, you're done paying for medications. To get to that level, you have to spend $8,000 out of pocket. That's what all the math works out to be. And so you would never in 2024 you would not have to pay more than 8,000 for the medications. But let's get into the specific drugs. And so this is what we really look at when we're doing this is we will look at your specific medications, how frequently you're taking them. You'll notice the software has all the tiers that keyed into it. So amlodipine a tier 1, cystatin's a tier 1, simvastatin's a tier 1, then we have a tier 2 for metoprolol. So then you can go month by month and really look at the projected cost at the pharmacy at Walgreens for your specific medications. And so it's going through, and you'll notice it's $0 for all the tier 1s and it's a $5 for a tier 2 because Walgreens for this plan is a preferred pharmacy. And you can do it month by month. In this scenario, all the months are going to look the same because you never really get out of the deductible phase. Because one, none of these medications are subject to the deductible, and two, the costs are so inexpensive that you just stay at that initial phase. So this is pretty straightforward. Is if these were your exact medications, this would be the plan we'd recommend. It's WellCare. This one is a $0 premium, which is nice, no cost, no monthly cost, and then you have a $5 copay on one of your medications. So that's pretty nice. I will just illustrate. We have different plans here. We have Humana. This monthly premium is $46 a month. And then the annual cost is actually a little bit higher for the drugs. We could look at all sorts of different ones. There are some plans that have smaller deductibles, like this Humana plan, for example, has a $0 deductible. So some people might come in and say, "I want a plan that has no deductible," which sounds great, but you're paying $111 more per month to get that. Is it really worth that? Oftentimes, that's not the case, and so this is all great. If you're on very inexpensive medications, it's pretty straightforward. And so now you might come back to me and say, well, okay, that's great for them, but I'm taking something much more expensive. And so I wanted to run the same illustration with using a more expensive medication. So Eliquis is one that is typically is pretty expensive. So we'll type that in here. We'll do 5 milligrams once a day. And so we're going to still do it at Walgreens. And we're going to hit save. The software runs through all this, and it goes through here. If you're interested, we can run your exact proposal. There's some paperwork we got to get filled out, but this is something we can help with. And so, again, the software will rank it from least expensive to most expensive on total cost, estimating annual cost, not just the drug cost. And I'll just illustrate this point real quickly here is this WellCare, this $0 premium still is less expensive. This WellCare plan has a much lower out-of-pocket cost for the drugs. It's $1,400 versus $600, but the premium you're saving $78 in premium. So when you look at it a full year, you're still better off taking the $0 premium and paying more for drugs. So let's look at the details here. I'm not going to go through that first section as quick as we did that the first go round, but you'll notice that Eliquis is a tier 3. And so what you'll notice is in the deductible phase, you're paying that full cost of $314 until take about 2 months. Now you're out of the deductible phase into the initial coverage phase. And so, again, if we want to go back to the benefit details, you can see that a tier 3 medication in the initial coverage phase is 25% of the cost. And so they look at the full cost of the medication. And when you're in the initial coverage phase, you're paying 25% of that cost. So that'd be $78. And let me see if we ever run it out of the initial phase. We might not. So in this example, you sort of stayed at that rate along the way. I could go through and add some other ones to really show you how the other ones work, but that's how the plans work. If you tried to look at that standard one, what we have on the board, and try to figure it out, it would be very difficult to sit down and figure out this on your own. And that's why we use software to do this, where we can run through all these examples. We can run it specific to you because each person is going to be different. It's not always this WellCare plan that wins. It's just in these two scenarios it was. But a lot of times there's another plan that might come in and work better. And it's very specific to you. And you want to make sure that you're running this, potentially every year. A lot of times you don't have to change every year, but there's a window of time that you get to change these plans in the annual enrollment between October 15th and December 7th. Outside of that window, you would need a special enrollment time to switch, and so that would be the time you'd want to look at it. You'll know it's time because you'll see all the Medicare ads on TV. But again, this is just an idea of how this works. This isn't really, it's not a recommendation of what you should do. but this is how we work in terms of finding the best plan for you.
So I want to add that in 2025, which is next year, from the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed, the maximum out of pocket when you're covered under Part D of Medicare is going to be $2,000. And what we didn't show on there is when somebody gets started on some very expensive drugs, many times for cancer, I mean, these costs and the copays, and they get up into this catastrophic phase, and they've got a lot out of pocket. And what they've done is they just put a cap on that. That's going to start next year. So just know that. And when we're doing plans for 2025, we're going to have the same rigmarole of your premium and your out-of-pocket cost, but the maximum number over there in the upper right of each one of those things next year is going to be $2,000. So that's going to be helpful to some people. Each one of these drug plans has a different formulary, and they're required to cover at least one drug in each category. So you can kind of get into where the doctor is going to prescribe one drug, and then they're going to say, no, you can't take that one, you got to take this one. That creates a little bit of a problem. But if you're already on the drug and we're running the software, we're going to try to find a drug plan that covers your drug as it is, okay? The plan premiums differ on every state and many times every zip code. Please don't just call us up now for an analysis because you want to switch drug plans, because we're not in an open enrollment period, okay? I mean, you're fine to call us up and we'll be glad to do some consulting for you and talk about it in general. And if you've got an expensive Medicare supplement, we can change that. We don't need an open enrollment period to change that. We can do financial planning for you, or we can get ready for when the fall comes around and there's open enrollment, we could change your drug plan. Now, some people where this really affects is if you're turning 65 and going on Medicare for the first time, well, then you can do this mid-year, and you're going to want to call us up and we'll do all this for you. If you've moved from one state to another state or one area, you actually have to make a change in your drug plan because the old one was based upon your zip code, so you'll get a special enrollment period. So there's many reasons that you would want to look at this during the year, and we can help you do that. I was just kind of saying generally, I don't want you to watch this whole video and think, man, I'm going to go change my drug plan and I'm going to do it with Cardinal, and then we're going to have some bad news for you if we open up with that. We're going to have to wait till October to actually make that change.
Hans, I want to do. I ran while you were talking. I ran another example with one of those really expensive medications because I think it would be helpful as one with cancer, a cancer drug, just so you could see sort of how that works, getting
Okay.
into those other phases. And so, the medication, I don't even know how to pronounce it. This Kiz Kale, I don't even know what this is, but it is an expensive cancer medication. And I'm going to just go quickly into these drugs. And so we'll notice that this is a tier 5 medication, and the estimated cost for a 1 month supply is $10,000 a month, which is like you
Yeah,
look
isn't
at
that
that
great?
and it's like, oh man, what am I going to do here? And so you'll see because the cost is so high, you look at the coverage period, is you in the first month you pay $2,600. So I mean you get in the deductible phase, the initial coverage phase, and the coverage gap phase all in 1 month, right? You're there. And then in the second month, you go from the coverage gap to the catastrophic coverage. What's nice about 2024 is with the once you get into the catastrophic phase, now it's a $0 copay for that medication. So those first 2 months, it's going to be expensive, but then the rest of the year it's covered 100%. And if we fast forwarded to 2025, like you were saying, is that maximum out of pocket would be $2,000, and so you would hit that cap even faster than that. So just know that this works with all medications. There are some really expensive ones out there, and these plans are going to start getting a little bit better. I mean, we haven't seen what the new plans for next year will look like. They might start changing the premiums. I mean, time will tell, but I think it would be helpful for these people who are on really expensive medications to have some limit where they're not spending $8,000-$10,000 out of pocket.
Okay. Well, real good. I mean, this is something where when we talk to our clients, I mean, they all value the Medicare supplement versus Medicare Advantage presentation. They value everything we do, but if there's a place that they specifically value where they were totally lost or made some bad decisions in the past, it's this Medicare Part D and having an understanding of it. And frankly, we're not making these videos to try to teach you all the ins and outs. We're just showing you what we go through. And when we get all done, we're going to tell you which one to buy. And then if you want to pick it apart and kind of figure out how we arrived there, we'll do it. Many times I'm just sitting there with our other person I'm working with, and I just say, just bottom line this, tell them which plan we're recommending they're going to buy and move on. So within the scope of financial planning, really, the only subject that we covered today is Medicare Part D. And so I want to bring Tom back on. I'm Hans Scheil.
And I'm Tom Griffith.
And thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you.